Test, test. Guys, we're going to go ahead and get started. Warren and Kelli are here. They're going to talk about an important topic in the industry, mental health in the games industry and game development. And for questions, we're going to do written questions today instead of just kind of like chiming out questions. So after 20 minutes, half hour, just get my attention. I got index cards. I got pencils. That's great pencils from Dean's daughter over here. So anyway, let's give a hand to our panel, please.
There we go. It helps if you turn it on. Hello, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Dr. Kelli Dunlap. I am a licensed clinical psychologist with a master's in game design, and I am the executive director at Take This, which is the original mental health nonprofit dedicated to serving the games community. So from players to gamers to studios, execs, developers, and everybody in between. I'm here with the one and only Warren Spector.
Okay, I'm Warren Spector. I've been making games for 40 years. By the way, before I get started, one of my medications has given me a tremor in my right hand, and I just spilled water all over myself, which is embarrassing, but I hope you'll live with that. So I guess I'm just going to jump in, I guess, and let Kelli jump in afterwards. So I'm bipolar. I just posted that on LinkedIn, and I assume most of you saw that. If you're expecting a talk about Deus Ex, this is probably not it, or Epic Mickey, or System Shock, or Wing Commander, or any of that. Hey. So I've known for a long time and wanted to talk about it. But for a variety of reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into, it's only recently that I felt comfortable doing this. And this seemed like the right time for a variety of reasons, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Absolutely. So just as some table setting here, anytime we talk about mental health things, it's really important to kind of set expectations and boundaries for the room to make sure that everyone's safe and comfortable. This is, there will be Q&A at the end. There are note cards going around. If you would like to ask a question, please jot it down on the note card. We'll be collecting those, and we'll be taking questions from the note cards as opposed to people just raising their hands. And so we can kind of moderate it and facilitate it as best as possible. Also, since we're talking about mental health, keep in mind, we're going to talk about topics related to mental health. That can include things like diagnoses and specifically bipolar disorder, as Warren mentioned, depression, anxiety, a full gambit of things. However, one thing I want to be really clear about is that suicide and self-harm are off the table. So will not be discussing it up here. We will not be fielding questions about it either. It is an incredibly important topic to talk about when we're talking about mental health, but for the scope of this talk, it's not here for today. And I guess the last thing I wanted to mention is that if at any point anyone feels uncomfortable, because we are talking about the vulnerable bits, the squishy bits, the stuff that can be hard to say, if you need to check out, if you need to step out, scan your phone, whatever you need to do to feel like regulated and safe, please take care of yourself and do that. And then I guess the last thing before we transition into the questions is I just want to make sure that everyone had a good understanding of what bipolar disorder is, and flex my psychologist muscles for just a moment. So bipolar is a disorder that is characterized by really big mood swings, from really high highs to really low lows. The highs are either manic or hypomanic, depending on the intensity and duration of the high feeling. And then, of course, there are the lows, which are depression, major depressive disorder. On the high side, there are some benefits. You have tons of energy, but then you can also go days without sleeping. You can be irritable or unpredictable and do things that are kind of out of the norm for you. And obviously that can have some pretty huge disruptions with your work, your life, your commitments, your spouse, your partner, and just your ability to function. And of course, depression, which is probably a little bit better known, it's the lows. Everything sucks, I suck, everything has always sucked, everything's always going to suck, and there's nothing I can do about it. And so when you swing from one end of the spectrum to the other, there is some time in the middle where you kind of level out. But everybody's experience of bipolar is different. And the last bit that I will stop with is there is bipolar 1 and bipolar 2, and that's differentiated by the intensity of the swings. So bipolar 1, your highs are really, really high and for longer periods of time and are more intense. And bipolar 2, your highs are a shorter period of time and not quite as intense as bipolar 1. So with all of that said, did I miss anything?
No, I think you got it.
Okay. So as you mentioned earlier, you had the LinkedIn article called "On Being Bipolar," and I'm so curious how have people responded to that post, and was there anything that surprised you in those responses?
The response has been entirely positive. I have to tell you, I was pretty scared doing it. It's not an easy thing to talk about. It's something that I've kept to myself for many, many years, largely because I wasn't sure that I would be able to get funding, that I would get a job, if people knew that I had these kinds of problems. Luckily, I'm one of the lucky ones in that I can kind of cover it up. I can pretend to be normal, but it's a lot of effort. And so most of the people I know probably had no idea. And that was weighing on me, but it was necessary. I mean, I needed people to hire me and give me money. But now, I was speaking for myself, I feel liberated. I don't have to, say, well, I'm busy every Tuesday afternoon. I can tell people I'm seeing my therapist, and so far everybody has understood that. The response I've got 90,000 people who viewed my post.
Oh, wow.
Well, in the cosmic scheme of things, I guess that's not a lot, but for me, it's a lot, and it's been 100% positive. The thing that I've loved about it is not so much that people say, "Oh, you're so brave," whatever. It's that people are sharing their stories, and of the hundreds of comments I've gotten, many of them have publicly shared their story, which takes a lot more bravery than I have. I mean, I'm at a point in my life and my career where, what are you going to do? Fire me? I'll find another job. That's okay. But for a lot of people, for them to, come out and talk about their anxiety, to talk about their depression, to talk about being bipolar, it's very hard. And so I've appreciated that. The thing that has, I wouldn't say it's surprised me, it's a little bit less surprising, but people have shared their stories personally and privately. And some of those are pretty moving. There are people who are suffering and people who need help. And I'll talk a lot, by the way.
You do?
I'm a wordy bastard. But a lot of people need help. And what I hoped was that I could make it okay, not for people to speak out publicly. Nobody in this room should feel like I'm saying, just go out and talk about it. You have to be in a position in your life and your career where you can deal with the uncertainty that comes with that. But I would hope that people understood that it's okay, to get help, it's okay to ask for help. I hoped that some of the companies that we all work for understand that and some of the people reading it, you can be a success. It's not like thinking differently, being neurodivergent in a variety of ways, whatever your way is. Success is possible. And I mean, whatever level of success I've achieved. And, I want the EAs of the world and the Activisions and the Ubisofts to see that they can trust people who think differently. And so I hoped people would see that. And the response has been incredible. People are getting it.
Well, that's so wonderful to hear. The internet can be a not happy place sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm sure you would know nothing about that being in games, right?
No.
All good. So you mentioned in your post that you had avoided seeking a diagnosis for kind of a long time. What was that moment where you're like, you know what? Maybe it's time.
Well, I've had some. This is so weird to talk about in person. It's weird. It's much less personal when you're writing. I've had depression issues since I was a kid. It's not like it's anything new. But I always thought it was unipolar depression, not bipolar depression. That all I thought was that I went down, not up. And so I went to see a therapist. I've seen 3 therapists now and 2 psychiatrists. and I have a wife who nails me on stuff all the time. And so I went to see a therapist because I was depressed. And, there were days when I didn't want to get out of bed, and there were days when, I'll cry at Hallmark commercials, and so that's why I went. It was 15 years ago, I guess. My first therapist said, I think you're bipolar, because I started describing some of the behaviors that I engaged in that I had always thought, well, anybody who goes to a convention and gets high for 3 or 4 days, or gets high for 3 or 4 days before they go to a convention, well, who wouldn't get excited about that? And that guy deserved it when I threw a remote control at his head. And that guy deserved it when I yelled at him for 45 minutes and had the only out-of-body experience I've ever had. I remember actually I felt like I was floating on the ceiling, looking down at myself, thinking this is the coolest and stupidest thing you've ever done. So I never put it together and said, some of those things are there. I'm getting pretty hyped right now. I always tell my teams, if I come in the morning and say, I had an idea at 4 a.m, be afraid, okay? Because I do get to the point where I don't need a lot of sleep. I've never stayed up all night. Well, I have. I did just the other night. But no, I get up a lot when I'm in that hypomanic stage. I get ideas that are I figure out game designs. I have 300 game designs on my hard drive. Everything from a sentence to a 20-page document that I wrote up one night. So I started. My therapist said, this might not be a causal thing. It might be a brain chemistry thing. And she said, and I resisted it. I've since found out that diagnosis resistance is a real thing. And to this day, I still resist it to some extent, every once in a while. But she told me, you're bipolar. She sent me to a psychiatrist who said, you're bipolar. I found another therapist, not cause and effect, but I found another therapist who said, you're bipolar. And I've now had three therapists, 2 psychiatrists, and my wife tell me, yeah, you got it. And so I kind of have to believe it. But it's very strange. I don't know. I'm not polling the room, okay? And I have no idea how many of you have ever felt this, but you get to the point where you can't construct a simple sentence. Your brain is going so fast, and not always in a good way, but sometimes it's in a really good way, and you feel invulnerable, and you get all these ideas. There was a period, my hypomanic phases last about 3 or 4 days. My depression lasts for like a month or 2, which sucks. I got up one morning after getting my 3 hours of sleep and had like 6 ideas for a game, for the game I'm working on now that I wish I could talk about, but I can't. I figured out how to rearrange my library. I figured out how to do the footnotes in a book that I'm working on. I wrote up, it was nuts. And she hates it when I say that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. No.
So it has this amazing upside. You just like energized and invulnerable, but sometimes you get the opposite. You throw remote controls at people and you yell at people. And about once a year, I punch a wall, because I'm so frustrated. I've never broken one, and I've never broken my hand, luckily, but the walls are not happy, and neither are the people on the other side of the wall. So it's an interesting, the highs are really, really cool most of the time, and they're some of my most productive periods, which is why I said I think some of the success I've had over the years is because of those moments, because of those days. because of all the ideas that come rolling out of my head. And then there are the downsides, which we can talk about whenever you want to talk about them. I'll just, I mean, if anybody wants to leave, I'll just keep talking, so.
Well, there's some really interesting research around the connection between bipolar disorder and creative thinking, as well as neurodivergence in general, so autistic, ADHD, basically any way of thinking outside of this pre-prescribed norm. And there's often a concern, I know with clients that I work with, that if I go on medication, I won't have the creativity, that spark will be gone, I won't be me. And as much as you're comfortable talking about how has that been for you? Because everybody's journey is different.
Sure. Well, I am medicated. I take 2 mood stabilizers. I take, and I don't take an antidepressant because antidepressants set me off. I mean, they make me manic, which sucks. It would be nice to be able to take an antidepressant. But I take anti-anxiety medication when I need it. I don't use it all the time. Xanax is your friend, by the way.
This is not endorsed by the mental health professional in the room.
Sorry.
Seek consultation with your medical provider before saying Xanax is cool. Thank you.
See, I have no filters. What can I say?
That's okay. That's why I'm here.
No, and I take medication as needed when I need help sleeping, which happens once in a while. I take another medication to keep me awake when I'm don't want to get out of bed. So, man, I hope you guys don't think I'm nuts at this.
Would you like a gentle reframe on that?
No.
Yeah.
I hope you don't lose all respect for me as a result of this. But the medication does have an effect. I was terrified before I started taking mood stabilizers in particular because most of the time I love those highs. They feel almost indescribably good. And if you've never experienced, if you're unipolarly depressed or anxiety, if that's your issue, or if you have ADHD, or if you're on the autism spectrum, I think all of those need to be addressed and dealt with and discussed. But for me, I was terribly worried that with the highs gone, I was going to lose something. But and the lows, man, bring them up. I mean, please bring them up. But what I discovered was that fear was mostly unfounded. It is a little frustrating. My highs aren't quite as high as they used to be. I mean, that has come down a little bit, and my lows have come up a little bit, but not as much as I'd hoped. But hey, I'll take a little bit of loss here for a little bit of gain here. It's better than a lot of what I've felt in my life. Let's put it that way. But actually, I am going to endorse one thing. There's a book called Touched with Fire by K. Redfield Jamison, who's written a lot about bipolar disorder. And it's entirely about artists and poets and writers and their experience of bipolar disorder. And so I found it resonated with me, if I can let my ego go for just a minute. And made me feel like what I was feeling was normal in some sense. So I strongly recommend. Actually, everything K. Redfield Jamison wrote is worth reading.
So far on your mental health journey, what are you most proud of?
Honestly, I'm most proud of having recorded that video and written that article. I looked around. Like I said, I've wanted to do it for a long time, but was afraid, not because I was worried that I would, I wouldn't be creative anymore if I took medication or anything, but because I needed to work and all that stuff that I've already said. But over the last couple of years, 30,000 people laid off. Just intuitively, anxiety is going to spike. And just out of the blue, I mean, it's coincidental, I guess, I started hearing, I guess I look trustworthy, I don't know. But people started talking to me about their issues, their anxiety, their depression. We're not going to talk about self-harm, but I heard a lot about self-harm, and it seemed to be getting worse. And so, I mean, the situation in the world, whatever your politics are, things are a little crazy right now. It seemed like the right time to do this. You know, I talked about this earlier. The response has been so great that, I mean, 80, 90,000 people responding, and hundreds of them, you know, coming out and saying publicly that they're dealing with this issue and feeling like it's about time somebody said this. So that's what I'm most proud of, for sure.
Great. So shifting a little bit to more industry focused to address the second half of our title there. If you, you know, the magic question that all therapists love to ask, if you could snap your fingers and change one thing right now that would have a major impact on the mental health of game developers, what would it be?
Wow. I mean, one thing? I can only get one thing?
No wishing for more wishes.
I guess this is a little meta, but I would hope that the major companies, well, there are a couple. Okay, I only get one. That they would put as much attention, give as much attention to mental health as they do to physical health. I've never worked anywhere until Other Side. I'm going to plug Other Side, not because we're hiring and all that stuff, but I've never worked anywhere whose insurance covered my mental health. I have to pay full price. That's ridiculous. I've worked places that had coding classes for non-engineers and live drawing for non-artists. And until I got to Other Side, I've never worked anywhere that had wellness sessions or meditation sessions. And one of the things I'm most proud of at Other Side, yeah, we're making really cool games, but we also have a real focus on well-being. I do not want to get into the crunch discussion out in here. We can talk about that in the hall because I have some very unpopular opinions about it. But we have a no crunch policy. We do meditation sessions every week, guided meditation sessions. There's a woman named Sharon Salzberg who is a meditation teacher. Look her up. Just look her up. She's fantastic. You know, we have lots of rituals and activities designed to take people away from their work for a while. There's a kind of a unifocus on just get your work done, and we have this is something I will take credit for this because I have an ego. But no, there are three aspects to your life in my mind, to oversimplify a bit. One is work, one is family, and one is health. And that is exactly the opposite order that we insist people live by. I don't, honestly, you can put family before health if you want. I put health first because if you're not healthy mentally and physically, you can't take care of your family. But I don't care. Put family first and health second, you're fine. Work always comes third. And I'm proud to say at Other Side, you don't have to believe me, you don't have to trust me, but at Other Side, we live that. And I wish more companies did. Instead of treating people like cogs in a machine, we treat them like people, regardless of what's going on up here.
So you already answered my follow-up question. What?
Oh, I'll answer it differently. Just ask again.
Great.
I suspect anyway.
So you were talking about Other Side, and the question I had was, what's something an employer has done that has made you feel safe to be yourself? Like you don't have to mask or pretend.
Well, a couple of things. Like I said, that policy that we have of health, family, work, that helps. The other is at Other Side, we just have an executive team that believes in this stuff. And when I talk about it, they understand and they support. And we were acquired 2 years ago by a company called Aonic. And when I told them I'm going public, I didn't say, I didn't ask their permission. I mean, like I said, what are they going to do, fire me? But their response was, well, of course you have to do this. And they, without going into detail, they told me that they had several people at their executive level who had their own struggles, and so they understood, they supported, they're still supportive of me. That's been really gratifying, and that's kind of why I felt safe doing it now.
Sure. So thinking about your experience at Other Side and then all of the other places you've worked, is there anything that comes to mind that maybe would have made it easier for you to be more open about your bipolar disorder earlier? Is there something that, previous orgs could have done to demonstrate, like, hey, it's okay to be here? Well,
a little bit of the kind of activities that I mentioned, the rituals that I mentioned. It shouldn't have to start with, me speaking up. It should start with people realizing they employ humans. I mean, like, we're not cogs in a machine. Making games is, I was just saying outside, it's grindingly hard, and doing things to make it harder is ridiculous. The other thing is, I'm not sure how to make this happen. Okay, so I'm really like, I'm blowing smoke right now. But you can't ask somebody if they're neurodivergent, right? But if we kind of made an effort not to judge people on the basis of how they come across, but how they do their work. I mean, I am at this point a huge fan of hiring people who have mental health. I don't even want to say issues, because it's not an issue. I'm not sure what the word is, but who think differently. It hasn't affected my job, my ability to do my job. There are. I mean, when I wrote that article and did that video, I was seriously depressed, and I didn't want to get out of bed. But I pulled myself out of bed. I did that video. I wrote that article, and it helped pull me out of it. So, I mean, if I'm not a doctor, God knows, but for me, just speaking for myself, forcing myself to get out of bed, doing something helps. And if you can, as long as you can do your job, if that's the doing you do. Like, I don't care if you're autistic. I mean, I don't care if you have depression. I care that you can get the job done. And I wish there was more focus on, did this person get the job done, than, hey, they don't interact, they don't, play nice with the other people. Or, I mean, I've worked with people. There was, I'm not going to go into detail, but I've worked at one studio where at 11 o'clock at night, a guy threw his desk over and started yelling, because he needed accommodation. He was really good at his job, and we were able to accommodate him. I wish more places would do that, not wait till it gets to the point where someone's flipping a desk over, but really do something. And I've dealt with that kind of situation before, so I forgot where I was going with that.
Well, you're about to steal my next question. I think we just share a brain.
Okay.
Or at least a brain cell.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. We can share it between us. It's great. So I'm curious, because I have heard your spicy takes about crunch culture, and I'm not going to go into them. I'm going to leave them alone. I'm wondering, without talking about it, how that brushes up against things like giving accommodations.
Right.
And whether or not, what you've experienced, for your years in the industry, and the accommodations you wish you had. How has having a bipolar diagnosis and not being able to share it with others impacted how you think about accommodations in the workplace?
Well, the simple answer is I've never seen any company accommodate divergent thinking at all. Never. And even when they were aware that someone thought differently or felt differently, nothing. So I can't cite any examples. But again, the desk flipper, he had social anxiety, and he couldn't work in an open pit area. So we created a little cube for him. It took nothing. Just to be fair, if he hadn't been good at his job, we probably wouldn't have done that, okay? So I will give everybody in this room the same advice I give anybody who asks how to get in the game business or what to do when you're in the game business to advance. Be the best at what you do. It doesn't matter how you think. It doesn't matter, nothing matters except excel at your job. This guy was good enough that we did accommodate him. I have worked places or known of places where folks weren't that good at their jobs, and the fact that they were neurodivergent didn't make a difference. So be really good at your job, and at least at other side, we'll accommodate, and we have. I guess I can't say diversity anymore, but we strive for a diverse staff. And we've got it. You would not believe the diversity on our staff. And it's not because we tried, it's because we hired the best people for the job. So be the best person, and be the best you can be. And, this is me being probably selfish a little bit. When you can't get out of bed, get out of bed, And when you're flying high, don't throw remote controls or yell at people. No, I'm serious. A lot of people. I have bipolar disorder too, and so I've gone out and twice I've bought cars on the spur of a moment. I've done it, but I've never flown to Las Vegas, on a whim and lost all my money. Bipolar disorder one is frankly a much more serious, life-affecting thing. But just be the best you can be, I guess, and get. I can like I said, I can kind of cover it up. You would never know when I'm depressed. That's actually a lie, because when I went and told people, I had 2 people I work with say, "Yeah, we knew," which took me by surprise. But they didn't judge. They judged my performance, not my thinking.
That's such an interesting part, because 1 in 5 Americans has a diagnosable mental health condition, and 1 in 2 Americans will have a mental health challenge at some point in their life. And so it's always important to know that just because no one's talking to you about their struggle, it doesn't mean it's not there. It just means that they're not talking to you. They're keeping it to mental.
You would not believe the people who've told me they're struggling with or dealing with or living with mental health issues. I'm getting messages from very highly placed people in this business, which might not surprise you, given how this business works, or doesn't work. It's broken. That's a whole nother panel. But no, very, very highly placed people have gotten in touch with me and said, thanks for doing this. It's pretty nuts. It's not nuts. Sorry, that's the wrong way but I do that all the time.
Wild, chaotic,
yes,
unexpected,
okay.
surprising.
Yeah, well, I drive my teams crazy because I have a saying. Damn it.
There you go. That's an acceptable one right there. Damn it.
No, because I always say no one remembers moderate statements. And so I tend to make immoderate statements, which, it doesn't always work for me that well.
Hey, Kelly.
Yes.
Quick note here. Pass around cards. If anybody wants to ask questions, write your question down. Also, some people have put questions in the app.
In the app? Okay. Yeah, we'll transition to questions in about.
we can talk about Deus Ex if you want.
I did ask about that. So I guess the last thing before we transition to questions, if there is anybody in the room who is like you were last year, sitting in the audience, feeling like that's me or that's my story that someone else is telling, but I'm not ready to tell it yet, what advice, if any, do you have for them right now?
Well, yes, to be absolutely clear, I think I said this already. I'm not proposing that anybody say anything publicly. There is real risk, okay? I felt that I'm at a point in my career where I don't care anymore, okay? And I don't know if anybody in this room is in that place. So I'm not saying don't to speak up, all right? What I am saying is find ways to deal with this, okay? Find ways to get out of bed when you're depressed. Find ways to calm yourself. I mean, my wife used to tell me, I have a lot of books, okay? And when I say a lot, I mean more than everybody in this room combined. I'm pretty comfortable saying that. No, I got a whole house that is a library, okay? I've only cataloged 10,000 so far. Yeah, I've got 7,000 Kindle books. But that's self-soothing, okay, for me. My wife she tells me, I know what kind of mood you're in by how many books you bring home from the bookstore. So that's healthier than drinking or smoking, right? So find ways to self-soothe, I would say, or go to a therapist. There's no shame in going to a therapist. I mean, if nothing else, you got one day a week when somebody has no choice but to listen to you without judgment. I mean, that's power. So yeah, if you need it, get help, and if you don't want to get help, find it in yourself.
All right, so as people are writing down, I've got some from the app here. Being a pioneer in video game development, who inspired you to blaze your indelible path in the annals of history? For many of us youngsters, it's easier to look at people like you and go, I know I can do it, he did it. But who gave you the confidence when you were on the cutting edge genre-wise for a newer industry when most of the prior games were way different than yours?
Holy cow. How much time do you have? No, okay, so I'm going to go back further than necessary. I'm an introvert who overcompensates, okay? I used to be really, really shy. And over the years, what I discovered is, like when I was in college, I realized that when it came to movies, I knew more than my professors, okay? That's not bragging, it's just a fact. They used to start calling on me when they couldn't remember something. So that increased my confidence a little bit. And when I got to grad school, I had to teach as part of my program. And there was one time I had a screen, and I wanted the class to look at it. And I walked over to the screen and I said, look at this. And 300 heads went like this. Looking at and so I knew I had them right in my hand. And so, again, a little bit more confidence. And I started playing D&D, and started to become more confident as a participatory storyteller. Not as a storyteller myself, but as someone who could share authorship with friends. And so I didn't know what I was going to do with that, but it was a feeling I'd never had before. And then skipping over a bunch of stuff about academic politics and losing my teaching position and all of that. I got a job at Steve Jackson Games, a small tabletop game company. And I studied with Steve Jackson. I mean, it was my undergraduate degree in game design. He taught me, find a mentor, by the way. He taught me so much about game design that I could never have learned on my own. So that helped, and I got more experience, working on role-playing games with Steve. So that concept of shared authorship became even more important to me. Then I got a job at TSR where it became even more important to me. But at that point, I started playing computer games. Playing Ultima 4. Wow. And talking to Richard Garriott at conventions like this one about what he was doing with Ultima 5. And I realized this guy knows what he's doing, and he's just on the cusp of recreating that feeling you get when you play D&D. And I knew I needed to do that. There's a much longer version of the story, but that idea just took root in me when I played D&D for the first time. And when I saw Richard making games that they weren't about character classes and, you know, stats. And I mean, that's role-playing, ROLL playing. To hell with that. What I wanted was ROLE playing. And Richard was getting that. That was my graduate study in game design. And there came a moment where I saw a player use the systems in a game to accomplish something that was impossible, that Richard and I had not anticipated. And I mean, out in the hall, if you want to hear the story, I'll tell you the story. But at that moment, a player doing something that the developer didn't know was possible because the simulation was just deep enough. At that moment, I said, I'm doing that on purpose for the rest of my life. And so the confidence came from just, you know, loving something, seeing that it was unlike anything in the history of humankind, and saying, I'm going to do that for the rest of my life. And the other thing, I told you I was a wordy bastard. The other thing is, I'm not patting myself on the back when I say this. I have no fear. I mean, the way to win an argument is to be willing to walk away from it. And, you know, the power of the word no is really something. On Deus Ex, you have no idea how many times people said, just make a shooter. Well, no. And on other games, it happens all the time because I make these wacky-ass games that are unlike other people. But you get confidence over time. And I mean, I'm on a mission, you know? I mean, this is not just, I don't care if I make my rent. I'll open a bookstore. I'll sell off my collection. If I can't make the kinds of games I want to make, I'm going to stop making games. And I believe in that. Again, I'm not saying anybody in this room should do that. But when you're on a mission, you know, I mean, Epic Mickey was part of the mission. It was an immersive simulation, and nobody saw it. The game community called me a sellout, and oh my God, it was crazy. Yeah, I said it again.
You did say wacky earlier there. I tracked that.
Okay.
So well done. Well done.
Okay.
So if you have any cards, feel free to, if you want to move them down the line, we can collect them and bring them in. And as we get those, I'm already seeing a trend in the questions in the chat and in the questions in my hand. And so just kind of synthesizing them together of what's, in terms of your own mental health and well-being, what has generally worked for you in terms of remaining balanced and like doing what you need to do to be productive and healthy?
Well, part of it is just necessity. You know, you can't expect to stay employed if you can't do a job. It's as simple as that. So but like I said, it takes a lot of energy, and I go home and I collapse. But there's in bipolar disorder, at least bipolar disorder 1, there's a tendency, it's very common that mood swings are seasonal. And I have some of that, but not much. Like, I mean, in spring, I'm pretty sure I'm going to, you know. But a lot of my stuff is triggered. Like, I'm going to go home from this conference, and I'm going to be flying high. I can tell you that right now. So a lot of it is triggered, but that means I can find strategies for calming myself. Buy books, you know, watch basketball obsessively. You know, I mean, I have things that I can do to self-soothe. I mean, everybody's got to find their own. I can't answer for anybody. You know, you just have to find your way to self-soothe or see your therapist. I mean, I'm not going to talk about my lowest lows, but I've had times where I've really highs and really lows, and thank God I had a therapist because, you know, she was able to talk me down or talk me up. So, you know, getting that kind of help can't hurt.
And there are some kind of follow-up questions around that same line of if there has been a therapeutic intervention, and as comfortable as you are talking about it, that has resonated with you. We don't need to, drop medication specifically, but has there been, what kind of therapeutic interactions have you found to be helpful that have helped you find those self-soothing techniques and been effective?
Yeah, I mean, the self-soothing stuff, the buying books, and that I don't know what caused what I don't know how I found it. I mean, my dad told me once, have I ever denied you a book when I was a kid? I mean, I was a bookish kid, and it always worked for me. I love basketball, so I watch a lot of basketball. Really, when I'm at my highest high or my lowest low, it's my therapist who helps me. I mean, frankly, I'm at the point I'm going down to every 2 weeks now.
Congratulations!
Yeah, it's terrifying. But I've reached the point where a lot of my therapy sessions, this is turning into a therapy session. No, they're more like conversations than anything else. But there are times when I need help, and she provides it.
Good. I love to hear that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So there's tangentially, what happens when working? How do you calm yourself down if you're overwhelmed? Like you're in the workspace and something either is triggered or you just can't mask anymore. How do you manage that when you can't just go out and buy a book?
Right. Well, I have a meditation mat, and I work in my library, and I've got a little room where I've got a meditation map, and that helps some. I mean, I stress eat. I'm not proud of that, but I do, and you can tell. Mostly I just try and I work in a library, so I get a book and I read, and then don't tell my employers this. I usually fall asleep, and when I wake up, I feel better.
So you take care of yourself.
I take a nap every single day.
Oh, those are goals. I'm gonna work towards that goal. Okay, there is a Deus Ex question, so I feel obliged. What do you think about the latest 2 installments in the Deus Ex franchise? Do you think they do justice to the IP you helped put on the map? And what do you think the future is for that franchise? And will you have any involvement in it again?
Next question.
Okay.
No. No, I can actually answer that. It's interesting. People ask me all the time how I feel about somebody else making a Deus Ex game, and I love it. It's like my baby is growing up. How can you not feel good about doing something bigger than yourself? Which is kind of how I feel about the fact that you guys are all here, actually. So I feel really good about it. I'm choosing my words carefully. Can you tell? I played I finished very few games. I play games until I want to throw something at the screen, and that has nothing to do with Mania. Or I learn what I'm going to learn from them. And I actually finished Human Revolution. And there were, I'm not going to talk about this in detail, but there were 4 things that team did that they shouldn't have done. Okay? 4 specific things. And I was really upset. My wife will tell you, when I play games, you hear me screaming, and not with pleasure most of the time. I yell at the screen, and I yelled 4 times. But at the end of the game, when I finished it, I sort of sat back and said, I just had a Deus Ex-y experience. It sounded like Deus Ex. It kind of felt like Deus Ex. And I was really proud of the team. So yeah, I think they respected it. Is there another one on the horizon? Ask Embracer. They own the rights. I've tried, but it's up to them. And if they asked me to be involved, I Probably not, because I have a day job, but I would love to work on another Deus Ex game. I mean, I shouldn't say this.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say it
Go
anyway.
on.
I'm going to say it anyway.
Go on.
Okay, no. All I will say is I know what I would do with another Deus Ex game.
All right.
That's all I'm saying. I want to say more, but she'll kill me.
But she's so far away.
I know.
Oh, okay. So we've got about 5 minutes left.
Oh,
just to
God.
kind of like
Just 5 minutes?
Just 5 minutes. So these two questions are very similar and actually resound with one of these two. And the general idea is, what can companies do? Like, what can they actually do? What systems can they change? What policies can they implement to better support their workers who are managing a mental health condition, to empower them, and establish overall better mental health practices in game companies?
That is the toughest question that anybody's asked me today. And the real answer is, painfully, I don't know. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to go public with this, because I need to learn that. I need to talk to people about what can happen, what we can do, because I'm making this up as I go along. I can tell my story, but and I can't tell any of your stories, and I can't tell EA this is what you should do. Other than I'm really proud that we do meditation sessions once a week at Other Side, but I honestly don't know. It's a terrible way to end a panel.
No, we have 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
That was a short
Okay.
answer. We're gonna
Okay,
go. Don't you
okay.
worry. So there's a second part to this question too, and I am selfishly going to want to try and answer it too, but I want to hear from you first. Should we be using games to tell stories about the subject for awareness and or being a solution for people going through their own mental health situations?
That's another tough question for me. I have never made a game for mental health. To be frank, I've never played a game for mental health. So I can't really speak to that. I think what we should be, okay, I have a whole lecture about narrative in games. I think we should be telling stories about anything and everything in games. There are no limits to what we can do in this medium. The key is, though, we can be doing it differently than any other medium in the history of humankind. And so don't listen. I hate cinematic games. I don't care how good the stories are. I hate them. Because we are so much better than that. No, I mean, we can do think about what we can do if we made games that were genuinely interactive, not faking it, not making roller coasters, which if you stretch out are really just a straight line. Okay, so if we would make okay. I try to make games that cause people to think about stuff. I don't want to just make something that gets you an adrenaline rush, or oh cool, I used the biggest gun and killed a bunch of zombies. I have no interest in that. And this is a whole other talk. We can talk in the halls, whatever. But we can make games that are about something and get people thinking about stuff through play. And if people want to make games about mental health and get people thinking about that and seeing the consequences of actions, like me throwing a remote control at the head of my boss's boss, I can put that in a game and I can show you the consequences of that. So tell stories about everything, but tell them in a way that is unique to us.
So as someone who has played a lot of mental health games and has made mental health games, it's really cool to hear you say the things that are in my head too. Again, that shared brain cell is fantastic and very validating, so thank you for that. In terms of should we tell stories, yeah. I mean, the research has shown that games are the only medium where people internalize the action. In movies, James Bond does a thing. In books, someone else does a thing. In television shows, the main character does something. In games, we say, I did it.
Or Lara Croft did it.
Well, in the movie, Lara Croft did it. But when I'm Lara Croft, I shot that deer and I sobbed hysterically
All right,
over it.
we'll talk about that outside.
Because I have feelings. But we tend to internalize them. We also know that games are the only medium that actually cause regret. Other mediums don't cause regret because in games we're allowed to make choices that we actually
Can I
regret.
jump in and tell one story
Of
really
course,
quick? When we were working on Deus Ex, my wife, who is a total game geek, played a beta build of the game, and in Deus Ex you can kill everything that moves, and see the consequences of that. There are definite consequences to it. And you could kill a dog, and that horrified me. But I wanted to make it a horrific moment when you did it. I mean, and I won't go into details about the horror, but my wife accidentally killed a dog, and to this day has never played the game.
And I think that's the power of when we talk about games like this.
Yeah.
I mean, I have an entire list if anybody wants games that deal with mental health topics, literally my day job. But to that point, when we're talking about player safety, like we should absolutely be telling stories that are important to us, but always be really mindful that even if your game is in a fake reality, the emotions that your players feel are real. And so if you are eliciting fear or terror or grief or sadness or regret, the brain doesn't really care that it's fake. The chemicals are the same. So tell those stories, but do them in a way that is kind and gentle and supportive. Yes, Warren.
It's funny you should say that the chemicals are the same, because how many of you have been to GDC? Have you ever been to the design challenge? I was part of the first design challenge. It was Ralph Koster, Will Wright, and me, and it was how would you do a love story. And but here's the sad part. The other two guys cheated. Okay, they made games that were about love, and I wanted to make a game that would evoke the feelings of love and get those chemicals going.
Yeah.
I failed miserably. And so what I did was I talked about my process and my failure and the research I did. I mean, I did all sorts of research. What's her name? Helen something. Oh, God, I can't believe I've forgotten her name. Anyway, there was a researcher, a love researcher, legit researcher. And I scoured her books and looked at, what are the chemicals that are released when you fall in love, and what are the circumstances that cause you to, be in danger with someone, you're going to fall in love, okay? But I failed miserably. But I
Oxytocin
really wanted to get those chemicals going.
Well, we are actually at time.
Uh-oh.
So I guess that we're going to stop there. Thank you all so much for being here and for your wonderful questions. And thank you, Warren, for your lovely insights and your openness and your vulnerability and being willing to talk about things that are still really hard to talk about and doing it in a public space. It means a lot. I'm sure to everyone in the room, everyone watching, and everyone who will read and has read your blog post.
Thanks a bunch.